I'm going to continue with the scheme that I put in front of you before we met the first time. Recall the New York Times Magazine article I asked you to read about taking a test that you didn't know how to do, and somehow mysteriously that made you better able to learn the material that was tested than if you hadn't tried to do that up front. So here's a question I'm going to talk about today, just for fun. Think about it now before I talk about it. So we've got a painter. He can make paintings at a marginal cost to himself of 15. That's just a number assumed. And he's got 6 customers each week, and he doesn't know which one's willing to pay which price, but he does know from experience that the one who's willing to pay the most is willing to pay 26, then the next guy 24, and so on. And he also knows from experience that if he places a sign behind his desk in the shop saying, "Ask about the special discount," not everyone will ask. He's got his paintings marked with a list price. If you ask about a discount, maybe you could get a discount. But he puts that sign there. Not everyone asks, but he knows from experience that it's the ones whose reservation prices are lower who typically do ask. The ones who are willing to pay high prices don't bother to ask. This is, I'm interested to report to you, something that some sellers actually do. I went to a conference in Minneapolis one year. I arrived the night before the meeting to check into my hotel. It had been booked for me by my assistant. My way was being paid. I noticed that the desk clerk had a sign above his desk saying, "Ask about our special discount." That was indeed the inspiration for this question. It wasn't going to save me any money because my way was prepaid, but of course, as an economic naturalist, I couldn't resist asking about this. "What's your special discount?" I asked him. "Oh, sir, you can have that room," which was, I was already signed up to pay $209 for. "You can have that room for $160. I said, "Okay, then I'll take it for $160. You might wonder why people would offer somebody a discount on precisely those terms, and probably in that case it was ill-advised. If the guy's already paid, you don't ask him to ask about the special discount, but presumably the sign was aimed at people who came in to inquire about a room, not that it was a fly-by-night hotel, mind you. And in that circumstance, it might have been a rational thing for a seller to do. So what should this guy do? He's got 6 customers. He doesn't know who they are, but he knows the ones with higher reservation prices are the ones who will ask him, who will not ask him about the discount. So he puts that sign up. What should he do? He knows that the ones whose reservation prices are above 21 will not ask. The ones whose reservation prices below 21 are going to ask him about the special discount. So he can set 2 different prices. He can put the list price on every painting, and then for those who ask, he can offer them a discount. So the question is, if he's a profit maximizer, what should his list price be, and how much should he sell the paintings on discount for? And then you have 5 choices. Discount price 18, list price 22. Discount price 18, list price 24. Discount price 16, 24. Discount price 16, list price 20. None of the above. What's the right answer? How would you think about that? I didn't mean to discuss now how to think about that. I'm just asking you, how would you think about that? So think about it. Keep that problem in the back of your mind. I'll talk to you about how you might think about that in the course of the hour, but if you have any feedback on whether this is a dumb thing to be doing, I'd be glad to hear it. The "this" reference in that sentence was asking you a question at the beginning of the hour that you don't know how to do yet, not this discount scheme. Did it seem to help you absorb the information that I'm going to talk about later, the fact that you thought about this at the outset or not? Maybe most of you won't have any opinion about that. Maybe it had an effect on you and it's subliminal, you won't know about it. But if you have an opinion and you want to share it with me, I'm curious whether this is helpful. I'm going to do it from time to time and would be interested to hear your feedback about it. Okay, we established last time that monopoly is inefficient. Inefficient is bad. You know I think that. I've been hammering that repeatedly for many sessions. But that doesn't mean that we have a better option. Life is bad, as I've made the point multiple times too. We face one bad choice after another. You want to get more of something, you got to give up something else that you want. That's bad. Making those trade-offs intelligently is good compared to the alternative of making them in a foolish way. So it's all really about doing the best you can. So you don't want to call that exercise a bad thing to be involved in. That's really a sensible thing to be involved in. But monopoly is inefficient, that's bad, but is there anything we can or should do about it that would be better than to just leave it alone? That's kind of the focus of the discussion for today. Well, we have to really ask, why do we have a monopoly in the first place? Suppose we have it because we granted a firm a patent. Should we eliminate patents? There's no reason to think that that would be a good idea because we presumably had our eyes open when we adopted patents in the first place. If we didn't have patents, the firms wouldn't have the same incentives to develop new ideas and bring them to market. And we think what we would lose from weakening that incentive is probably worth more to us than what we would lose if we said no patents will be granted henceforth. So we grant them and we just suck it up in terms of the losses from efficiency from monopoly. They charge more than marginal cost. Well, that's the price we pay for a benefit that we think is worth more to us than the loss we suffer there. What if it's a natural monopoly, one that is in existence because, and only because, it has economies of scale? It's cheaper to produce when you have one firm than when you have many firms. Does that mean we should outlaw monopoly, break it up? Well, that's the case we're going to focus on. What we know is, in terms of the protocol for discussing natural monopoly, as far as we're concerned, it's just going to be a firm that has marginal cost less than average cost. That's what it means to have a natural monopoly. The more units you produce, the lower the average cost. I'm going to assume for simplicity that there's a big fixed cost up front and that the marginal cost is a constant small amount, so that the more units we produce, the average cost per unit gets smaller and smaller, but it never gets as low as marginal cost itself. That's sort of a standard pattern that we might expect to see when we have natural monopoly. More output, lower average cost. What if we required the firm to produce its output and sell it at marginal cost? Well, if we held a gun to the owner's head, what would she do? She would produce 40 million minutes a day of phone service and sell them at the price we said, but her average cost is higher than that. She would lose money day by day. How much money? Her economic loss would be the area indicated by the pink rectangle. What would she do in the long run? She'd go out of business if we insisted that she sell on these terms. Would that be a good thing? Well, if we put her out of business, we're going to lose something. What are we going to lose? We're going to lose the economic profit she makes. That's a real gain to society. She'll invest that. Maybe there are shareholders who'll get a share of that. And we're going to lose the consumer surplus that consumers would have gotten. She produces 20 million minutes a day. Her average cost is only 8 cents a minute at that level. She sells them at 10 if she's a profit maximizer. That's her profit. That's the consumer surplus. Both of those are big positive numbers. And we would lose those if we forced her to charge price equals marginal cost, which would be the efficient level of price to charge. So efficiency is a good thing, but not a good thing compared to any old alternative. It's a good thing in the abstract, and maybe there's a way to take full advantage of efficient pricing. Maybe there isn't, but it doesn't mean that putting the monopolist out of business is better than tolerating the monopolists surviving and pricing the product inefficiently. That's point number one. There's an output shortfall. Yes, we acknowledge that. There is some lost surplus. Yes, we acknowledge that. There's some deadweight loss. Yes, all those things are true. The monopolist knows that it would be better to expand output. She's not stupid. She knows there are people who would be willing to pay more than marginal cost. If she could make a deal with them to do that, then she would be happy to do it. The reason she doesn't do it is that she fears she has to cut price to everyone else if she offers anybody a lower price than the price that she's currently charging. If she could offer a discount only to the people who would be out of the market otherwise and keep the same high price for the people who are already in that market, that would be a win for her. Would she want to do it? Yes. The question is, can she do it? The standard assumption in textbooks is that it's not practical to do that. If I sell to some people at a discount, they'll go around and they'll arbitrage that market. They'll take the cheap units I sold them and sell them to people who would otherwise be charged the normal price, and so I won't be able to charge the normal price if that happens. So the standard assumption is that firms can't do this, but the standard assumption is wrong. It's just wrong. Firms can do this. They can give discounts to new people and not cut the price to existing people. There are practical ways for them to do that, and that's our topic. Some textbooks, most textbooks, acknowledge that that can happen under certain circumstances, and they have a term for it. They call it price discrimination. I hate this term. I loathe this term. If I say to you, discrimination, good or bad, what's your reaction? Discrimination, good. Somebody says that, then everybody's going to look at you strangely. Who raised you? What kind of socialization were you exposed? Discrimination, good. Come on. Discrimination, bad. That's your knee-jerk reaction if you're a normal human being with a pulse who's grown up in a well-socialized environment. You're not supposed to discriminate. I like to call the practice I'm going to describe to you by a different name. Differential pricing. You hear differential pricing, what's your reaction? You don't say bad. Well, maybe you don't say good either. You might shrug when you hear that, or you might say, well, tell me more. What's that mean? Differential pricing. I don't have a valence on that one. Differential pricing is a good thing under very widespread and generally satisfied conditions. That's the topic that we're going to talk about. I'm going to try to make that point the way I try to make most points, namely with a crude numerical example. The example is constructed so as to be idiot-proof, which means I can understand it. And that means all of you can understand it. If somebody asked you to explain it, you would be able to explain why the seller's ability to charge different prices to different buyers is a good thing here. Okay, Ram is a monopoly seller. He's got wooden bowls that he sells to tourists. He's got 8 visitors. They come every day. He knows that they have different reservation prices. He doesn't know whose price is whose. He doesn't know who Mr. A is necessarily, but he knows there is a Mr. A and that Mr. A is willing to pay 16 and Mr. B is willing to pay 14 and so on. He may or may not know who those people are. Let's assume for the time being that he doesn't, and we'll look at the standard model, which means that since he can't charge different prices to different buyers, he has to charge them all the same. What should he do? Well, he's got a demand curve. It's not a continuous one, it's a discrete one, but it's essentially the same issue. And we can just fight our way through the usual calculations to determine how much it pays him to expand his output in this market. How many bowls should he sell if his goal is to maximize his profit? Well, should he even be in this market? Maybe 0 is the best I can do. I won't lose any money if I don't produce any bowls. What if I produce a bowl? How much can I get for it? There's an answer to that question. It's a uniquely correct answer. It's on the slide. If I were to sell 1 unit of output in this market, how much could I get for it? 16. Would I be better off doing that than not participating in the market? Yes, I'd get revenue of 16. My cost would be 3. My profit would be 13. 13's better than nothing. I'm in. Now, should I expand? What if I said to myself, well, yeah, I'm doing all right here. I'm making 13. Maybe I'll expand my operation and sell a second. How much would I be able to sell my bowls for if I've got to sell them for the same price to everyone? 14. The answer is on the slide. What's my total revenue? It's twice 14. I know what that is. It's 28. What's my marginal revenue? I was getting 16, now I'm getting 28. My marginal revenue is 12 from expanding my output by a unit. What was my marginal cost? Just 3. Should I expand? Yes. Unambiguously, yes, I should. What about a third level of output? I'd get 36 in total revenue. I was getting 28. What's my marginal revenue? 8. What's my marginal cost? 3. Should I expand? Yes. What about a fourth level of output? I got to cut my price to 10. I'm going to get 4 more units of revenue. I'll get 40 instead of 36. My marginal cost is 3 still. Should I expand? Yes, but only barely. 1 more unit? No. The next unit I consider is a loser. I get no extra revenue. I sell 5 units at 8, I get 40. I was getting 40 by selling 4 units at 10. So marginal revenue, 0. Marginal cost, 3. Loser. I don't expand any more than that. How am I doing? I'm doing all right. I'm getting some profit. The consumers are doing okay. They're coming shopping at my shop voluntarily. They're doing okay. I'm making $40 a day in revenue. My costs are $12 a day. My profit is $28 a day. What about my consumers? How are they doing? The first guy would have been willing to pay 16. He only paid 10. He got $6 of consumer surplus. Buyer number B was willing to pay 14. He got $4 of surplus. Buyer C got $2 of surplus. Buyer D, tough. He didn't get any surplus. He was just indifferent between buying and not buying. Maybe I got to sell to him for $99, $99, $99, $99, and so on to get him in. But we got winners here. The seller's a winner. The buyers, such as they are, they're winners too. It's not a bad outcome. It's just not maybe as good as the outcome that we can imagine achieving. Is it the socially efficient level of output? There's an answer to that question. It has 1 syllable. No, it's not socially efficient. Why not? There are buyers who are willing to pay more than the marginal cost of making a bowl for them, and they're not getting one. Who are they? all the buyers with asterisks next to their names should get a bowl. They should get one. Why? They're willing to pay, they value it more than the cost of producing a bowl for them. They should get one. Who gets one? Only the first 4 buyers. Well, what about buyer E? He should get a bowl. He doesn't get one. Buyer F, he doesn't get one either. He should get one. Why? Because he's willing to pay more than the cost of. Buyer G should get one. Those guys should get one. What about buyer H? Should he get a bowl? Should he get a bowl?
No.
Dimitri?
No.
Why not?
Because he didn't ready to cover the cost.
He's not willing to cover the cost of it. Well, what if I said he deserves a bowl? The reason he's not willing to cover the cost of it is he grew up in a broken home. Funny? He grew up in a broken home. It's not good to grow up in a broken home. He had severe childhood illnesses. He didn't do well in school. He isn't employable at good wages. He can't afford to pay as much as these other guys for a bowl. But when you put the hedonometer on his head, the needle goes just as far to the right as everyone else's. He would love to have a bowl. He would really love to have a bowl. And you want to tell me he should not have one. How would you explain to him why he should not have one? What if there were a social justice warrior with a gun to your head who said, you got to give that guy a bowl? What would you say to the social justice warrior in response to that demand? I would have, I think, a persuasive response to both of them. Do you have one? If you don't, then you don't understand the efficiency concept. What's your response?
The pie would be smaller.
What's that? The pie would be smaller. Who cares about the pie? Yeah, what do you elaborate? So you want to do something for Mr. H. That's good that you want to do something for Mr. H. He had a rough time growing up. You want to do something for him? All right, we got 2 choices. We can give him a bowl. That's one choice. Or we can give him $2.50. Which should we do? He'd rather have $2.50. Why? Because he's poor. He needs money. $2.50 is a big deal to him. How much would he be willing to pay for a bowl? He'd love to have a bowl, but how much would he be willing to pay for a bowl? $2. Which would you rather have, $2 or $2.50? If you asked him that question, he'd say, I'll take the $2.50. What if you asked Ram, which would you rather do? Give him a bowl or give him $2.50? What would Ram say? Who said the bowl? The bowl costs him $3 to make. I can give him $2.50 or I can give him a bowl. Well, if giving him the bowl would be better for him, I might want to take a hit and give him the bowl. But no, he'd like to have $2.50 more than he'd like to have the bowl. I'm going to give him $2.50. That saves me 50 cents. It cost me $3 to give him a bowl. I'll give him $2.50. I'm better off. He's better off if I give him $2.50 than if I give him a bowl. What's not to like if we're comparing giving him a bowl on one hand with giving him $2.50 on the other? It's better to give him $2.50. Now, maybe you might say, well, it's not practical to give him $2.50. Best thing we can do is force the company to give him a bowl. I don't know. Maybe that's right. But you ought to try to figure out some way to give him the $2.50 rather than give him a bowl. And the answer to the question, why shouldn't he have a bowl, is that he doesn't value it by as much as the cost of producing the bowl, and we could do more for him by giving him cash than by giving him something that's worth more than he values it. And if you can't sort of construct that narrative when somebody would ask you to explain why he shouldn't have a bowl, then you don't understand the efficiency concept. Kyle.
Once you get $2 back, so you have the only out $1 if you give them a bowl. Like you pay $3, but you get $2 back, so it's just $1 difference. So it'd be better.
Yeah, if I want to say, can I get some money for him? But no, I'm saying that the choice is either you give him a bowl or should he have a bowl? The bowl costs me $3 to make. he values it too. It would be better for me to give him 250. Yeah, we could find lots of prices in there that would be better for him and no, but him having the bowl, no. Him having the bowl would not be one of the options.
So isn't it also wasteful though to give everyone 250? Because I mean, person A doesn't need another 250. Isn't it? It's more useful just to focus on.
So you're worried that if we give some kind of handout, if we hire him to sweep the streets or plant flowers in the park, Mr. A is going to feel resentful and start playing golf instead of working on Fridays?
No, but well, I mean, if the pie is finite, why give person A 250? Because that's then money. Isn't that money that?
I'm not giving person A 250. I'm giving person H 250.
Well, it's just sort of, I guess, what I was getting at before when you said, would person A want 250? Well, you'd want it, or she would want it. But
Person A would rather have a bowl than 250. If I say to person A, would you rather have a bowl or 250? That's a no-brainer. I'll take the bowl.
No, that's
It would have made more sense to talk about H in that situation.
I thought you were saying it was wrong to think that person A would rather have the 250 as well.
Person A would not rather have the 250. If you said, I'm going to take your bowl away from you, how much will you give me if I let you keep it? He'd say $16. That's person A. Person H, I'm going to take your bowl away. How much would you pay me not to? $2. That's what those numbers mean. Okay, so A through G in that list should have a bowl. Should, in the meaning I just tried to explain. H should not have a bowl. The efficient number of bowls, unambiguously, is 7. We don't get the efficient number of bowls in the standard monopoly format. How many people get bowls? 4. There are 3 people who ought to have bowls who don't get them. The allocation is inefficient. I'm not trying to conceal that from you. It is inefficient. Okay, now we imagine a different scenario. Ram not only does not have to charge every buyer the same price, he is such a shrewd judge of human nature that he can charge every buyer a different price and a price equal or almost equal to that buyer's reservation price. There are sellers who have a knack for doing roughly that. They're not perfectly able to do it, obviously, but they can come close in some instances. They can sort of size you up and figure out how much you want that thing, what would you be willing to give up for it. They look at how you talk. They look at the clothes you wear. They look at the jewelry you have on. They look at the kind of shoes you're wearing. They evaluate whether you seem nervous. There are all sorts of tells. Poker players are good at this. We used to have a faculty poker game regularly. One of the deans played in it, and he was not a good poker player. He asked one night after, he would win sometimes. You get good enough cards, you win, even if you're not a good poker player. But he asked one night, how come when I have a good hand, everybody folds? And when I bluff, everybody calls me. He wanted to know. And one of the other guys at the table, an economist, said, Robert, it's because when you have a good hand, you bounce up and down in your seat like that. And the rest of us said, we'd been making money off this guy for a couple of years because he bounced up and down in his seat as if to say, I got the cards this time. He couldn't help it. But no seller can get it just right. You know, they can't get to your reservation price. They might, be able to tell this guy's willing to pay more than that guy, and they bargain and they learn a little more. But it's imperfect if you do that. Here I'm assuming that he's perfect at it. It's a limiting case. So what's he going to do in that situation? He's going to charge every buyer exactly her reservation price. You want to argue about that and say, why would the buyer buy if it were exactly her reservation price? Then I'll say he'll charge visitor A 15.99999 on out as far as you want to go. And therefore, since visitor A would be better off, she would buy it. But then that's exactly the same statement in the end. So how many units would he sell? He would sell bowls to each customer with an asterisk, and that's exactly the right number of bowls to be selling. So here's one reason that you might think discrimination is not such a bad thing. We got an inefficient outcome originally. Now we get an efficient outcome. The right number of bowls get produced. The consumers aren't going to be happy about that, though. Why? Because they're not getting any consumer surplus at all under this arrangement. They're paying the most they'd be willing to pay for every unit. In the original one price case, we had $6 of surplus going to A. We had $4 of surplus going to B. We had $2 of surplus going to C. 6 plus 4 is 10 plus 2. We had $12 worth of consumer surplus. If you can perfectly price discriminate, you get $0 of consumer surplus. The consumers aren't happy about that. So when I say differential pricing is a good thing, if this was how you did it, I'd be on weak ground insisting it's a good thing. It might be a good thing for the seller, but it's a really not so attractive thing for the buyers as the standard textbook model. The seller does great. He gets a revenue of 70, a cost of 21. He gets $49 a day of surplus. The consumers don't get any. Okay. That's the perfectly discriminating monopolist. He's efficient, but it's not so great for consumers. That's not the kind of price differentiation we observe in the marketplace. That's a very, very different animal from what actually takes place. What we see, I call the hurdle method of price differentiation. You will not find this term in most other textbooks. I coined this term decades ago. And like most of the terms I've attempted to coin, this one hasn't achieved broad currency in the market. Maybe someday it will. I think it should still. See what you think when you hear the full narrative that accompanies this term. How does differential pricing work if sellers use the hurdle method? What they do is they put a hurdle in your path. You come into the store, you have two choices. You can get the item you want off the shelf and walk directly to the cash register and pay the list price for the item. Or you can jump the hurdle that the seller has put in your path. And if you're willing to do that, you can purchase the product at a discount. You already saw one example of this in that problem I put up for you right at the beginning. What was the hurdle? You have to ask about the discount price. For some people, that's an embarrassment. What, people in our family don't need discount prices? What do you mean, ask about your discount price? What do you think, I'm a ragamuffin or what? But others ask about the discount price. And the ones who ask aren't the same as the ones who don't ask. They're different. And how are they different? Their reservation prices are lower on the average. That's the logic of this approach. So we've got our same seller, Ram. He's got the same buyers as before. He knows the distribution of their reservation prices, but he does not know who's willing to pay what. But he does know something. He knows that if your reservation price is above $9 a bowl, that's to say, if you're one of the high rollers in this scenario, then you will never use a discount coupon if he puts one in the tourist magazine. These are people who are willing to pay a lot, maybe because they have high incomes. The opportunity cost of their time is high. If they're given a chance to clip a coupon and remember to bring it into the shop, it's not worth their time even to do that. So they never do it. Others, they're a little bit on a tighter budget. They say, yeah, it cost me a few seconds to clip the coupon. Of course I'm going to clip it. The low price buyers clip the coupon. The high price buyers don't clip the coupon. And the key thing is he doesn't know which ones are in which category, but he doesn't need to know which ones are in which category. All he has to do is put the ad in the tourist magazine and let them reveal which category they're in by whether they bring in a discount coupon or not. He doesn't have to do any of the heavy lifting here. Here's a chance for you to jump over the hurdle. I can see whether you jumped over it. If you jumped over it, I'm going to give you a discount. Why? Because I know statistically you're in the group of buyers whose reservation price is lower. Those are the buyers I want to give a discount to. I don't want to give a discount to the first group. I want to give a discount only to the second group. If you don't bring in the discount coupon, you pay list price for the bowl. So he's got to put a price on the bowl. The customers come in. If they have a discount coupon, they pay that price minus the discount. If they don't have a discount coupon, they pay list price. That's how it works. Where should he set the discount in this example? The way to think about this is just to perceive, under the assumptions of the problem, that he has essentially two different markets. It was just as if one of them is in Bombay and the other one is in New Delhi. Here's the list price buyers. How do I know that's who they are? They didn't bring in a coupon. They're the high reservation price buyers. Let me just think about what I would do if they were the only group I was catering to, since I am catering to them separately as a group. I'd say, should I even be in that market? Should I sell one bowl at 16? Sure. 2 bowls at 14? We've already done this calculation. 3 bowls at 12? Yes. 4 bowls at 10? I'll expand all the way down to 4 bowls. Why? Because the marginal revenue from each step is greater than my marginal cost of 3. So already you see that nothing can go wrong here. Why? Because the same buyers from the original problem, the single price monopoly question, those same buyers, A, B, C, and D, are buying the same bowls at the same prices as before. Ram can't do any worse. Why? Because he's getting the same revenue from those buyers as before. They're getting the same consumer surplus as before, if they're getting any. We can't do worse than we were doing in the first instance as a result of him offering the bowls for sale in the list price market at the very same price he offered it to everybody in the original example. But now he's got this separate market to cater to independently from worrying about those people. Shall I sell to at least one person in this market? How much would I get? I'd charge him 8. So I'd get 8 in revenue from the discount buyers. What would be the marginal cost of serving that guy? 3. That's a winner. Should I expand? I'd have to cut my price to 6. So I'll get 12 in revenue. I was getting 8. That's 4 more than before. Yes, I'm going to expand. What about the next guy? No, he's a loser from my private perspective. I'm going to get $12 in revenue if I have to cut my price to bring him into the market. I was getting 12 already, 0 marginal revenue, but it's going to cost me 3 to make the bowl I sell to him. No, I'm not going to sell to him. That's the solution when we have the hurdle. Rod. Good question, and I'm going to get to that. That's the concept. So is it efficient? Well, we got a list price market. We went through, we did the marginal revenue calculation. We expanded out to 4 units. We did the discount price submarket. We did the calculation. We expanded out to 2 units. Is that efficient? Well, We know what we're going to do, and it's not efficient in a strict sense. He's doing fine in this market. The seller is. He's getting $6 per bowl in the discount market, $10 a bowl in the list price market. He's getting 10 times 4 is equal to 40 in revenue. He's getting 6 times 2, an extra 12 in revenue. We can calculate his cost 6 times 3. We can calculate his profit. We can calculate the consumer surplus, which will be the same as it was before, plus the additional consumer surplus from the first guy in the discount market. Everybody's doing better than before, but is it efficient? No. Why isn't it efficient? Because this guy here is not getting a bowl. He ought to get a bowl. If I said, should he get a bowl, your answer would be yes. Why? Because he values it at more than the cost of getting a bowl. He should get a bowl. He's not getting one. That's inefficient. But note this, it's not very inefficient. He's the only guy who ought to get a bowl who isn't getting one, and he ought to get one by a small margin, actually. It's not a matter of indifference whether he gets a bowl or not. He should get one, but we're not much better off if he gets one than if he doesn't get one. It's not efficient just because it doesn't go all the way. But it's more efficient than the single price monopoly outcome. Life is a series of choices between bad outcomes. This outcome is bad. The other outcome, single price monopoly, is worse. If you think charging different buyers different prices for the same good is a bad thing, you're going to implicitly reveal that you prefer a worse outcome to a better outcome. This is a better outcome. You ought to prefer it and not the original outcome. So don't be knee-jerk negative on the subject of differential pricing. The first step to adopt that posture is don't call it price discrimination, call it differential pricing. That'll help you abandon your negative attitude toward it. What are examples of this? The rebate coupon. As just noted, the rebate coupon is maybe one of the simplest and most direct examples of the hurdle method of price differentiation. You want to get a discount? Clip this coupon. Get an envelope. Where the hell are the envelopes, dear? I don't know. What's the address we have to mail it to? Do we have stamps? I got to go get a stamp too, then mail it? There are lots of hurdles here. The high rollers aren't going to want to jump any of those hurdles, never mind all of them. But the people who care about price, they're going to jump those hurdles with enthusiasm. It's going to be a source of pleasure to them to jump those hurdles. A perfect hurdle is one that the discount buyer, the low reservation price buyer, will jump with very little cost, and that the high reservation price buyer will not jump, will not find it worth his or her while to jump. That's a perfect hurdle. A perfect hurdle cuts the market in two nice, clean parts. No hurdle is perfect. Don't be alarmed. Life's imperfect. That's no different from any other aspect of life. The question is, do these hurdles make matters better or not? And the answer in general will be yes, they make matters better. Temporary sales. You get 30% off if you come and buy during the sale. What's the hurdle? Well, if you were just there anyway and it was 30% off, there'd be no hurdle. They're trying to get people to come during the sale, but then you got to find out when the sale is, and you got to clear your calendar so you can get there during the sale and not miss it. That's the hurdle. It's an effective hurdle. You can get linens at a discount in January white sales. What's the hurdle? Waiting until January to get your linens. We've got a rip in our sheets. It's July. What should we do? Well, we can get sheets for less in January. Let's let's just sleep on this rip sheet until then. Most people, if they have a sufficiently high reservation price for the product, won't wait until January. If they need the product now, they'll go and get it. But the person who cares about price will have anticipated that the sheets were about to wear out and get rips in them, and will have bought them in January, knowing that she was going to need sheets, and will have the discounted versions on her shelf ready to go when the other ones rip and need to be replaced. The hardback book sells for a premium over the paperback book. The marginal cost of producing the two types of books is almost the same, pennies different. Why would somebody pay more for the hardback book rather than the paperback book? You get a nice discount if you buy the paperback book. The hardback book comes out now. You want the paperback? You got to wait a year. You want to talk about the book when everybody else is talking about it, be part of the conversation? You got to buy the hardback. You're price sensitive. You read reviews, you get it out of the library, you wait a year, and you buy it then. Hardback, high price. Paperback, low price. You want to jump the hurdle, you get the cheap version. You don't want to jump the hurdle, don't jump it. You buy the hardback. There's the menu of prices available at Cinemapolis. What's the hurdle? You want to get a discount? You got to go at a less convenient time. You're asking someone out on a first date. You want to see so-and-so. Yeah, I've been hoping to get to see that. Well, can we go to the matinee? I'm feeling a little pressed this month. Not every guy is going to feel comfortable saying, you want to go to the matinee? Some guys are confident. They say, I'm on a tight budget this month. You mind going to the matinee? Other guys don't want to reveal that they're on a tight budget. And so they're willing to pay more to see the film without revealing that fact. And so they'll pay the price. It's a hurdle. You can either jump it or you not jump it. It's your choice. What about the senior discount? Is that a hurdle? Yes. So what's the hurdle I have to jump? Yeah, I won't see any movies until I reach a certain age. In one way of looking at it, that's not a hurdle. You're either a senior or you're not a senior, and so they're really just separating their market into two different categories. That's technically speaking not a hurdle. But in another way of looking at it, it is a hurdle. If you say, I'd like a senior ticket, please, they don't say, let me see your ID. They don't say that. So if you could credibly claim to be a senior, you could get a senior discount. So what's the hurdle in that case? Your willingness to tell a lie to get a discount. You want a discount? I'll give you one. You got to lie to do it. The people who care about price desperately will lie to get a discount. Most other people will not lie to get a discount. It's a hurdle, viewed in that way. Here's the very most important form of hurdle. It's the one that most people wouldn't even recognize as a hurdle. These are two versions of the fabled 3 Series BMW sedan. It's a great car. It's a driver's car. My wife bought a 2004 330xi in November of 2003 and sold it last month to an engineer from Boston. He flew all the way to Ithaca to buy it. You can't find ones that age that are in mint condition, and it's a terrific car. You should have seen his eyes light up when he saw it. But why didn't he buy a new one? Presumably, the purchase price of the new one was a hurdle he wasn't willing to jump, but he could have bought, if he's willing to buy a new car in the first place, he could have bought two versions of a new car. One, the 335i, the other, the 328i. It used to be that these numbers told you, the last two digits in those numbers told you what? The engine displacement of the car's engine. That meant what? It was a 2.8 liter engine. That meant it would be a 3.5 liter engine under the old scheme. These two cars both have engine displacements of, does anyone know? Exactly 3 liters. They have exactly the same engines, except one's tuned a little differently from the other. This one has considerably more horsepower because of the tune. The tuning costs BMW almost nothing. This one is tuned down to have a lower horsepower rating. And the reason they do that is that the people who care about price will tolerate a reduction in quality, a marginal reduction in quality, to get a big discount. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to buy the car. It'd be beyond their reservation price. The people who don't care about price, what are you, I'm going to get the weak engine just to save $7,000? Are you kidding me? That's not who I am, people would say. That's a hurdle. Tesla was in the news this weekend. What for? Because they released the firmware update that would enable the 60-watt battery car to go as if it had 75 watts. It's the same battery in the two cars. They detuned the battery, or I don't even know what the right word is for it. They put a governor on the battery. What did they do? Because the one with the 75-watt battery would 75 kilowatts, so I don't know what even the units are. The big battery, they could sell for a premium because it had more range, and the people who care about quality and aren't so worried about price will pay a premium for that. Why did they release the firmware update free of charge? So people who live in Florida could get out of the way of the hurricane. Would extend the range. They did it as a public service. People got angry at Tesla because, oh, that means you were selling the higher battery rating at a premium, even though it didn't cost you any more to produce it. Well, that's the same thing as here. It doesn't cost them any more to produce this car than it does to produce that car. It costs them a little more, is what I mean. It costs a little more to produce the hardback than the paperback. But the price difference is way bigger than the difference in marginal cost. And that's not a bad thing. If they charged everybody marginal cost, they go broke. You got to charge some people more than average cost. If you're going to charge others less than average cost, you want to expand the market, I got to cut my price to expand it, but then I'm going to lose money compared to my average costs. If you want me to do that, you got to let me charge at a premium to cover the shortfall that I'll get from the units that don't cover average cost. Coach fares and Super Saver fares, maybe the best example of that. You stay over a Saturday night, $570. You don't stay over a Saturday night, $1,467, almost three times as much. Why do people who stay over Saturday night get a discount? They're going on vacation, many of them. When's the last time you took a vacation when you didn't stay over a Saturday night on your trip? Can you remember a time? It hardly ever happens. You go on a Friday, you come back on a Monday, or you go on a Friday, you come back the next Sunday. You're almost always gone on a Saturday during your trip. You have a lot of options to choose from when you're going on vacation. If they don't give you a low price, you'll go somewhere else. So this price is targeted at vacation travelers whose options are many and they don't have to go on vacation in the first place. This price is targeted at business travelers who don't want to be there on the weekend. They're going on business. Business takes place Monday to Friday. You want to be home with your family on the weekend. The value to you of going when you want and coming when you want is great if you're on a business schedule compared to if you're on a leisure schedule. And so that's the way they do it. If everybody paid this price, the airlines would go out of business. That airline did go out of business even with this fare structure. even with this fair structure. They're just barely making it by selling each seat for as much as they can, and if the marginal costs are below average costs, that means selling some seats much more cheaply than others, but they're not making necessarily any obscene economic profits in the process of doing that. Maybe they are, maybe they aren't. We don't know. But the fact that they're charging you more than the average cost if you pay list price, that's not a signal that anything's wrong. If they didn't do that, they'd go broke. My favorite example is the scratch and dent sale. I've described it to you briefly on our first day. Sears has the clerks take ball-peen hammers out to the warehouse and hammer dents into the refrigerators and stoves before the scratch and dent sale. Used to be they would just sell the ones that were damaged in transit. Now the sale was so successful that they don't have enough that are naturally damaged during transit. They go out and beat them up. Why? Because that's such an effective hurdle. You want to buy at the scratch and dent sale, it's a deep discount. What do? You got to find out when it is. It's only on one day a year. You got to queue up. You got to get there. You got to clear your schedule so you can go then. You got to queue up. There's 3 hurdles right there. And maybe the biggest one, you got to live with the knowledge that there's a dent in your refrigerator. I'm an economist. If there were a dent in my refrigerator and that meant I got $1 off and I knew that the dent would be up against the wall where nobody would see it, I would say, sold. What's the difference if there's a dent? No one's going to see it. But there are people in this world who would say, here, I'll give you a refrigerator on discount, $100 off because it's got a dent. No one will see it. They'd say, well, I'm not the kind of person who buys a damaged refrigerator just to get a discount. Come on. Who do you think you're dealing with here? This is a hurdle. It's a set of hurdles. It's a great set of hurdles. This is marketing at its utmost. And if you're a marketer and you're trying to figure out ways to do this, you're not a person wearing a black hat. You're not causing harm to the public interest. I think people have the impression that if you're just figuring out ways to move product, that's not a good thing. It's a good thing if people who are willing to pay more than marginal cost can get it, and this is how you get more people into the market. It makes the surplus bigger. Henry.
With the BMW example and the coupon example,
Yeah.
are those technically the same kind of price differentiations? And so the BMW example, there is a difference in the benefits, not just the price.
Yeah, they're not exactly the same. They're approximately the same. So the Texas Instruments company used to sell a calculator or 2 versions of it. One had a math coprocessor, the other one didn't. And the way they made the second one was to take the chip that had the math coprocessor in it and zap it with a current and disable the math coprocessor. And then they would sell that second one at a discount. People were outraged when that was reported, but that's a totally okay thing to have done. If they hadn't been able to come up with a hurdle that would let them give a discount to people who were willing to pay only if they got a discount, they wouldn't have sold as many calculators. The price would have had to be higher. There was a time when Apple offered a black MacBook for the first time alongside the traditional white MacBook. Are any of you old enough to remember that? I don't know, maybe you weren't attentive to that when this is at least 10 years ago, probably longer. And they charged a couple $100 extra for the black MacBook. And there was outrage. It's the same computer, it's just a different color. But people were willing to pay more for the black one. It was unusual, it was distinctive. And people did pay more for it. They volunteered to pay more for it. And I got a call from the Texas Attorney General. He wanted me to help testify against Apple in a suit he was planning to file against Apple. He knew I was interested in the subject because I had written a column about it, defending the Apple practice. I said, go back and reread the column. You don't want me as your witness. If I'm going to be a witness, it'll be because Apple hires me as their witness, not because you hired me as their witness. But nobody called me for either side because he finally realized, I suppose, that filing that suit would have been a dumb idea. Apple has economies of scale. They need to cover their marginal costs, of course, but they need to cover all those upfront costs. Somebody's got to pay them. Who should pay them? The people who are willing to pay them, the people who care most about the features you get in the product. And how do we know who they are? Just by their willingness to step up and buy the black machine. They're telling you, I'm somebody who cares a lot about extra features. I care even about the color of the machine. I'm willing to pay $200 more to get the color that's different. Not that black is even better, it's just different. Okay. There are two problems here. One is the fairness problem with natural monopoly. They're taking my money. That's the complaint. Okay, they are taking your money. They're getting more than the cost of serving you if they're getting an economic profit. Again, make note that they're not necessarily getting an economic profit just because they're still in business. They might be just barely breaking even, as most of the airlines over their history have been. But suppose they are getting an economic profit. How much should we worry about that? Is that really unfair? On the list of injustices that you encounter in life, how should we rank that one? Well, they're not necessarily making an economic profit. They could be making a loss. But if they're earning an economic profit, where does that come from? Go back to the hurdle model. If they're getting an economic profit, it's not coming from the discount buyer. If everybody paid that price, they'd be losing their shirts. If they're making an economic profit, it's coming from the list price buyer. Okay, so let's imagine the list price buyer complaining about the fact that it's unfair that he's being ripped off by the natural monopolist. You could have gotten a discount, is the opening line in that conversation. Why didn't you? You could have jumped this hurdle and gotten a deep discount. Why didn't you? Answer, I didn't feel like it. Or it was inconvenient for me to jump that hurdle. Okay, now I've got to reevaluate how much I'm worried about the fact that it's unfair that that person is contributing an extra dollar to the firm's economic profit. I'm not too upset about that fact. You want to pay a lower price? Jump the hurdle. I don't want to jump the hurdle? All right, then don't complain to me that you didn't pay the lower price. If you bought the black machine, you can't complain that you contributed to Apple's economic profit. Everybody buys the cheap version. They don't make an economic profit. The margin is on the more expensive units. Where does the money go if they get an economic profit? Well, they pay some corporate income tax if they don't evade it. They pay the rest to shareholders, most of whom are quite wealthy. They get dividends and capital gains. They pay tax on that at the federal level. They pay tax on that at the state level, and they pay sales tax on what they buy out of those gains. A lot of that money goes to fund public projects that we think are in everybody's interest to have more of. So the disposition of the economic profit, the extra dollar that the monopolist earned by being a natural monopolist, it goes quite a bit of it to fund public projects that we would all have less of if they didn't get that dollar of extra profit. So those two concerns about natural monopoly lead me to say, I'm not worried about natural monopoly of the conventional sort. That's an unconventional position on antitrust. I don't think the natural monopolist is the biggest source of concern for us in the economy. Yes, they charge more than marginal cost, but they get pretty close to marginal cost by offering discounts via the hurdle method of price differentiation. Yes, they take in more profit than a company that did not have sole market power or market power in the market would be able to do, but much of that extra profit comes in the form of voluntary or quasi-voluntary contributions by the list price buyer who could have paid a much lower price than average cost. You can't have it both ways. Can't have everybody paying lower than average cost and then complain when some people have to pay more than average cost. And so if you think about that, and you were to go through the list of things that worry you, you say, all right, here's natural monopoly. They don't produce enough. The single price natural monopolist produces where marginal revenue equals marginal cost. That's this length on the line. That's too little. The marginal cost is equal to marginal revenue, but the value of the last unit is greater to society than it costs to produce the last unit. That's bad. We don't like that. We'd really want to be here rather than here. All those things are bad, yes, but if we allow them to tinker with their pricing, and this is, again, the holy grail of marketing. You want to sell the product to the buyer who's willing to pay most for it. You don't want to give discounts to people who don't need them. You're going to sell not the level of output for which marginal revenue and marginal cost are the same. That's that level of output. You're going to sell one level to the list price buyer and another level to the discount buyer, and the sum of those two is going to be much bigger than the output you were complaining about being too small in the original case. We've cut away at some of that loss by virtue of being able to expand the market. And the more hurdles they can figure out how to offer, the more they can chip away, the closer they can get to where we would want them to be, namely a spot closer to the socially efficient point. And on the fairness side, yeah, let the buyer complain. The one response to the complaint is jump the hurdle next time. Don't pay the high price. You don't have to pay it. Okay, now here again is the question I asked you to think about at the beginning of the hour. Let's return to it. I've got two markets here. I've got a list price market and a discount price market. What's the hurdle? You're told in the preamble to the question what the hurdle is. Just put a sign on the wall saying, ask about our special discount. The assumption is that people who are in the top half of the price distribution of reservation prices aren't going to ask. You can set a price and assume they'll have to pay that price because they're too embarrassed or for whatever other reason aren't going to ask about the discount. The others are going to ask. And so you're going to be able to set a price for them that is low enough to get them into the market where they wouldn't otherwise be in the market. So what's the correct answer to the question? Just think about this market as if there's a firewall between the two segments of the market. A, B, and C, that's one submarket. D, E, and F, that's a second one. Do I want to be in the list price submarket? Sure. What's my marginal cost? $15 per painting. If I sell one painting, how much will I get for it? $26. Do I want to sell at least a painting in the list price market? Yeah, of course. A second painting? Well, I'll get 48 if I have to cut my price down to 24. What was I getting before? 26. What's my marginal revenue? 22. What's my marginal cost? 15. Do I want to sell that second unit? Of course. What about the third unit? What's the calculation? If I sell 3 units, my revenue is 3 times 22, 66. What was my revenue? It was 48. What's my marginal revenue? 18. What's my marginal cost? 15. Do I want to sell that third unit? Yes. So what's my list price offering that I put on my paintings? 22. That's the answer. What's my discount price? I just have a brand new market to evaluate in the same way. There's nothing complicated. You just do the same exercise as if they're coming into a different store. The first guy, do I want to sell to him? What would I charge if I sold to only one? I'd charge 20. Is that more than my marginal cost? It's $5 more. So if I were to sell one unit, would that be in my interest to do? Yes, of course. Would I want to expand? Well, let me sell 2 paintings. What would I have to sell them for? 18. What would my total revenue be? 36. How much more is that than I was getting if I sold only one? It's 16 more. Do I want to sell that second unit? Yes, because my marginal cost is only 15. So there's a uniquely correct answer to this question. And it's option A. If you circle any other option besides A, you should get a red X next to it. Doesn't always happen, but you should. Question 18, if yours was graded incorrectly, bring it up to me and I will correct it. If it was corrected incorrectly and you got credit for it and you shouldn't have, show me that too. One student has done that already.